Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Unatu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvinavadi Ramastu Mavid Vishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us, may he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om, peace, peace, peace. And good evening. We are reading from the complete works of Swami Ramakrishnananda, one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. We're in volume 1 of his complete works, and this particular lecture is entitled Religions Higher and Lower. And we're quite a ways into this already. So we will begin, if you're following along in the book, it's on page 418. The sages of ancient India have divided the lower regions into 7 spheres, the lowermost being Patala, where living beings that love darkness, such as Daityas, Danavas, Nagas, etc., like to dwell. These are tamasikas by nature. The surface of the earth is the abode of humanity, where light and darkness, spirit and matter, knowledge and ignorance are incessantly fighting against one another, and hence it is more like a battlefield than a dwelling house. Men are generally rajasika in their nature. Above the surface of the earth and below the heavens, the mid-air is peopled by siddhas, charanas, vidyadharas, gandharvas, and other beings. This is called Bhuvarloka, the abode of the demigods. Swargaloka, the abode of the gods, who are sattvika in nature, is situated not on this side of the heavens where the stars, the sun, the planets, and the satellites are situated, but on the other side of it, beyond the ken of the mortals. There are 5 heavens, one above the other, the lowermost of which is ruled by Indra and inhabited by the gods. When a man finds the earth to be too little and inadequate for him, he propitiates the gods by means of yajnas or sacrifices. They, in turn, take him to heaven after his death, having showered upon him many blessings during his earthly life. When the desire for expansion grows strong, he feels the inadequacy of the sensual pleasures to be found in the lowermost heaven. Having thus outgrown it, he is lifted up to higher heavens, where sages who have conquered their senses live. Thus he is gradually lifted up to the Mahar Yoga, the Jnana Yoga, the Tapoloka, and the Satya Loka. The more he wants to shake off ignorance, the more he wants to expand himself. Coming to know the impermanency even of Satya Loka, he wants to realize that which is permanent, changeless, and eternally peaceful and blissful. So at last he renounces that Loka also, and thus saves himself from repeated births and deaths, and attains final liberation. He rests perpetually in the infinitely blissful presence of the Lord of the universe, the one omnipotent and omniscient being, the abode of all bliss, knowing him to be the soul of his soul, nay, the one soul of all souls. Thus gradually man evolves from tamasika condition till he realizes perfection. This process is called karma mukti, or salvation by evolution. The highest region, that is Satyaloka, or Brahmaloka, is ruled over by Brahma, the creator of the universe. Although he is ever active and is thus Rajasika in nature, still Rajas does not bind him, for he, the firstborn child of God, was also his first student. From him he first learns that the individual soul is not the worker but as an instrument in his hand. He was the first to understand his inactive nature amidst all his activities. Just as a witness sees another working, himself doing nothing, he who sees inaction in action and action in inaction, says Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, such a man of great mental concentration is qualified to do all works. The first created being was thus able to be the creator of the universe. Just as a swan has the power to separate milk from water, Brahma had the power to separate truth from falsehood. Therefore, he is called the Paramahamsa, or the all-knowing swan. Being the first Paramahamsa, he is the leader of all future Paramahamsas, and along with them, he has found a safe abode in Brahmaloka. In that land of highest intellectual bliss, amidst all sorts of stupendous activities, Brahma is ever peaceful and calm. When, during the time of universal destruction, even his abode gets destroyed, the calm and peaceful Lord of Brahmaloka remains beyond the reach of all destroying time, as peaceful and calm as ever, absorbed in his own supreme self, Narayana, who eternally rests on Ananta, or infinity. Well, that's quite a hunk of a paragraph, to say the least. Talk about Ananta and infinite, almost getting there in this paragraph. And there's a lot of technical jargon about the different lokas. And it's interesting that a lot of cultures seem to have levels to the heavens. Heavens and hells, 7 below and 7 above, 14 regions. So there must be something to it. You don't get a lot of evidence of that in people that have had in-between life experiences and regressions into in-between life situations and so forth. Don't seem to get any clear delineation. At least I haven't seen any clear delineation of these various lokas, but perhaps it's because they're all beyond what one would be able to describe and come back from anyway. But I think probably the greatest teachings to be gotten out of all of these details is really this teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, and this idea that even though you may feel like you're doing something, it's not really you doing something, it's the Lord working through you. It's the universal energy working through you. And you need to try to maintain that attitude of the witness consciousness that's then flowing through you. And in so doing, you can reach that level of detachment that allows you to be in the world, but not of the world. So that really is probably the most important part of this whole long paragraph. Try to be like Brahma. We need to try to imitate Brahma in that trying to be ever peaceful and calm. Here he's created the whole universe, in that he remains peaceful and calm. So we should certainly strive to be peaceful and calm, even with the little things that we do in the world. Continuing on, but those souls who do not want to have the least connection with any sort of activity whatever, who want to realize their own infinite nature, do not like to remain even in Brahmaloka, as that too is a place which is not permanent and not free from activities. Such souls merge their individualities in the universal soul of the Supreme Lord, Narayana, and becomes one with him in the bond of love. That is why Sri Krishna teaches Arjuna, quote, all the lokas beginning from the highest Brahmaloka come again and again, but when a man comes to me, he will have no rebirth any more. Unquote. So finding out our lowermost point in the center of the earth, we at last find out the lowest condition of the soul, as well as its highest. We have also seen that in order to be unconditioned and liberated from repeated births and deaths, the soul will have to go where there is no creation. And of course, that's the other thing to have gotten from that previous paragraph, is that it does sort of mirror, in some sense, what we go through just in our ordinary cycles of birth, death, and rebirth, where it describes having aspirations of going from one loka to the other. In a similar fashion, people aspire to have better and better positions here on the earthly plane. So they desire that they'll be better not only in this life, but that they'll do good actions so that they will have a better situation the next time around in their next incarnation, so that they're not as troubled with things. However, and again, just like the analogy he's drawing here with these various celestial spheres, one gets tired of the enjoyments, no matter how great and grand all these enjoyments are. One tires of them, and one longs to be free from the whole nonsense of the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. And so that really kind of mirrors the individual soul, as well as these various deity realms going from one loka to the other. A man going beyond creation directly comes to the Creator, as where there is no creation, there must be He who creates. Many people are apt to think that this idea of heaven and hell is merely mythological. Heaven and hell have no real existence. By heaven, we always understand a blessed condition, and by hell, a miserable condition. These are only localized in two imaginary places, which go by the names of heaven and hell. And to support their view, they adduce this reason. Let us take for granted the existence of heaven and hell. When I am sleeping, suppose two angels take me up to heaven, and there, in that sleeping condition, make me live for years and years together. Therefore, also angels come and worship me while I am sleeping. After the lapse of that long period in the same state of sleep, I am brought back here in my old place on earth and made to wake up. Although I have been living in heaven for so many years, I have no idea of it after waking. Why? I was in heaven, and still I was not in it, for I was not conscious at the time. Where then does heaven actually exist? It exists in my consciousness, or in me. In the same manner, where does hell exist? Let us see. Suppose again I am sleeping, and two men from hell come out and take me to hell, and there I am punished in many terrible ways while I am sleeping. After some time I am brought back to my old place. Although I have undergone so many punishments in hell, still I am not able to recall them, for I was not conscious at the time. Therefore punishments or miseries must be in my consciousness, or must be felt by myself. Hence, heaven and hell exist only in myself and nowhere else. So he's just making a point that a lot of this is our own mental attitudes that's adding to it. Often we hear people tell someone else, it's always somebody else that they seem to have insights on. It's hard for us to have insights about ourselves sometimes, but we can all tell other people what's wrong with them. And we can tell them that, oh, well, you're just making a hell of your whole life here. It's all your fault here. You intentionally see things so negatively. Everything you look at, you take in the most negative way possible. And so, of course, you're miserable. And someone else, they might have what we call a Pollyannish attitude. I bet you're all too young to have remembered that movie. There was a book and a movie called Pollyanna, and this young girl actually managed to cheer a lot of people up because she was always cheerful, and so it goes through several situations. This old lady that's just living in her cobwebs, she cheers her up, and the old grouchy preacher, she cheers him up, and now he's giving nice sermons and so forth. So anyways, those people that are overly sweet and optimistic are often called Pollyannas. But there's some truth to that. If you can get your mind into a better state of being, things will seem much better. And so you can make a heaven even out of difficult situations. Pretend it's some sort of a game of challenge or something, and get out of the situation. Oh, I was going to mention something else too. Way back in the 80s, there was a very popular PBS series on the power of myth by Joseph Campbell. And he told the story of the humbling of Indra. Indra was very proud of himself being the lord of all the devas and so forth, and wanted to build great mansions and so forth and so on. And so I forget who it was that was going to humble him now, whether it was Brahma or Shiva or somebody or Vishnu. Somebody was going to humble him. So what they do is they show him this line of ants, and so Indra says, well, why are you showing me this line of ants? And the voice says, all former Indras, every one of them. In other words, there have been millions of Indras that have come and gone. There's nothing permanent about being an Indra and being in that exalted state in a particular loka. That all of these are very individual things. Sometimes I think, as a scientific analogy, one might see Indras as being like solar systems, and Brahmas as being like whole galaxies. And each of those seem very big and very long lasting. But of course, a solar system doesn't last very long compared to the whole galaxy. But galaxies also don't last forever. They can also go back into dissolution. So this involution and evolution idea perhaps goes along on those scales, where the whole universe becomes involuted, and that's like a cycle of Brahma, going and coming. But when a solar system comes and goes, that's a cycle of Indra. And so you can see how many more Indras there are that come and go compared to Brahma, and that even Brahma is not eternal. All right. Continuing on, the argument is all right as long as man identifies himself with his consciousness. Does he ever do so? Let us see. This consciousness in which all knowledge exists, and but for which no knowledge can ever be, is the same as Brahman, or pure consciousness, in which the whole creation exists, and but for which creation can have no existence. This is strange English. And but for which creation can have no existence. Brahman, being purely conscious, knows everything about the entire creation, which exists only in it. It with a capital I, meaning Brahman. Human consciousness, confined within the limitations of body and mind, can only illumine their inside, and has no power to go beyond, just as a lamp inside a room only illumines the room and not outside it. Now, of course, I think these great souls that can read people's minds and tell them what all their past and lives have been like and so forth, their consciousness is not confined within the limitation of their body and their mind. They have purified it to the extent where they have access to that greater realm of consciousness. When one can get rid of these limitations, he becomes unconfined and all-pervading, the same as Brahman, the omniscient one. Shruti says, he who knows Brahman, the purely conscious, becomes one with it. When a man can identify himself with his consciousness, he becomes a purely conscious being, which is the same as Brahman. So that's why they would become all-knowing, you see. This is the most difficult of all achievements. Now, I think there's a lot of partial manifestations of this phenomenon. One doesn't need to be totally identified with the pure consciousness of Brahman in order to have some sort of psychic connections. A lot of people have limited psychic connections due to some degree of purity or one-pointedness of the mind. None in the entire creation can get fully rid of the limitations of body and mind. That is why Sri Krishna says, there is not a single soul in the world of mortals, nay, there is not a single God in the world of gods who is free from the three ties of matter or prakriti. Unquote. Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna used to say, quote, you cannot give a durable shape to gold without mixing it with some baser metal to form an alloy. Similarly, the infinite soul is naturally so formless that if you want to give a form to it, you have to make an alloy of it with matter. Unquote. So long as this material impurity is there, the limitless soul will have to regard itself as limited. The moment this impurity is got rid of, the soul finds out its limitless nature and becomes free. So, before a man gains salvation, it is not possible for him to identify himself with his consciousness. He is bound to regard himself as formful, occupying a certain place in the universe. To such a man, therefore, the whole creation exists with its infernal, intermediate, and celestial quarters, with all their sufferings and enjoyments. It is natural for such a man to believe in the higher and lower regions, and regard the earth as a stationary body round which all the heavenly bodies are moving. To him, therefore, all the various spheres of existence, those lokas, that we have just now described, must exist, as he would look at everything in relation to himself, not as pure consciousness, but as formful being. So indeed, while you're in the state of Maya, then all of these kinds of realms and descriptions have some sort of degree of relevancy, because you're in the state of multiplicity and you're looking through the veil of Maya, no matter how thin it is. Obviously, the great souls look through very thin veils of Maya, and many of us look through rather thick veils of Maya. So it just depends on how foggy the glass is on your windshield when you're looking out from your car. Sometimes you can see things more clearly than others. But there's always a piece of glass in there, and there's always a little bit of dust, no matter how clear it is. And it's limited to a particular scope. You've got pillars and things in the way. So this is kind of our situation. So we're striving to identify with that pure consciousness so that we have a greater understanding of the world. And indeed, as I've mentioned just a few moments ago, there's many partial layers to this where people can get glimpses of greater realms of consciousness. Some people do it in lucid dreams. Some people do it in their normal dream state. Some people do it in meditation states, or some sort of other mechanism of getting into some sort of altered state of consciousness. But all of those are still going to have a degree of illusoriness to them. And that's why psychics can be much more intuitive than the ordinary person, but they're not infallible at all. Many of them can be quite wrong, in fact, sometimes. There was an interesting program called the Psychic Challenge where they challenged these psychics to various tests. And again, while most of them did better than any of us would have probably done, they missed really things that you would think any good psychic would be able to do. Matching husbands and wives, people with their pets, musicians with their instruments. And most of them maybe got 2 out of 5 or something. It is just like they were just really off. And yet other things they might just zero right in. So sometimes they're on, sometimes they're not on. You can't always depend on them. So that's this dilemma of being somewhat more in tune with that cosmic consciousness, or that a lot of times they'll call it the Akashic records. They've tuned into the Akashic records. Well, you can imagine if you tried to find something just in this one library, it'd be difficult to zero in on exactly what you wanted to find. So it's no wonder it's not always that easy to scan through the Akashic records. Does any man regard his form as imaginary and false? Rather, he ignores, not unoften, the very existence of his soul as distinct and separate from his body. He firmly believes himself to be Mr. So-and-so, a Hindu or a Christian or a native of this country or that country, well-educated or not so well-educated, fairly rich or not so rich, fairly tall or not so tall, short, dark, fair, and so on. He entertains no doubt as to his being all of these. Thus it is impossible for him to give up the idea that he is formless and limited, and even if he understands himself to be eternal, dwelling for a short period of time in his present body, the idea that he was living in various bodies before and is going to live in many bodies hereafter to satisfy his various and ever-rising desires cannot but be an undeniable fact to him. And when he associates misery with darkness and happiness with light, and when he knows the abode of darkness to be in the nethermost regions, and sees that light or happiness comes from the highermost regions, he naturally aspires to go to the higher regions to be happy, as nothing else but happiness is what he wants. Thus the eternal yet limited souls must rise up continually to the higher regions in order that they be more and more happy. For such souls only the universe with its higher and lower regions exists. Who can question the reality of the universe? Certainly not he who regards himself as limited in form, though he may know himself to be eternal in being. So again, just stressing that idea that while you're in the state of Maya, you're pretty much stuck seeing things in this way. And we can theorize that there's this oneness behind the whole universe, but it's very convenient and much easier for us to try to manage things in the world by visualizing the idea that there are these different levels of heavens and different levels of hells and different levels of aspirations and different regions in which one's consciousness might go. But it's just your consciousness going there. And once your consciousness is united with the infinite consciousness, then all of these things will disappear. All of those things will dissolve along with the identity of your separateness from the absolute. And that's why, as Sri Ramakrishna said, on this side of Maya, there are no answers to these various kinds of questions. And when you're beyond Maya, there are no more questions. The questions disappear. So it's like, I think we've been through this before in previous classes too, where we talk about reincarnation. Reincarnation is the way things appear within Maya. But if you try to pin it down, you can see that it doesn't quite all add up. And the only way to explain that is that, well, we're in Maya, and Maya is not supposed to be 100% logical. It's illusory. Swami Ashokananda, who was the head of the San Francisco Center for many, many years, said the most you can know about an unreal thing is that it's unreal. So if you're trying to figure out all the details about Maya, give it up. Now, let us view the subject from the standpoint of the absolute. No point can be definite or fixed in this indefinite space. The center of the earth may be regarded as the fixed point only in relation to humanity. Whoever has got the least knowledge of astronomy can understand that the center of earth is not a fixed point. So since there is no definite point in this universe, we cannot say which is high and which is low. Again, I'll have to reference Mr. Dobson's teachings. He used to tell us how when you look out in this universe, you see everything away from you in space and backward in time, and the separation is zero. And so you are the center of all the universe that you observe. He says that, Ptolemy never had it so good, and Copernicus never had it so good. They wanted the earth to be the center of the universe. Everybody's the center of their universe. Because everything that you see away from you in space and backward in time. And so everybody is the center of their observable universe. It's in your consciousness. This universe is in your consciousness, and it's your perception, and you're the center of it. Still, the ideas are there. How are we to account for them? In answer to this question, we say that we get these ideas of higher and lower regions from our own body. We call that high, which is toward the direction of our head. We call that low, which is toward the direction of our feet. This, the greater seer of ancient India found out. Since apart from the body, a man cannot have any conception of above and below. Higher and lower regions are to be sought inside the body and not outside it. Head and heart, therefore, should be regarded as higher regions. The navel and the pelvic regions should be regarded as lower. And if misery is to be found in the lower and bliss in the higher regions of the macrocosm, the same must be the case with the microcosm. The ancient seers not only found out man to be the epitome of the entire whole universe, but came to know him to be the very root of it. Thus they gave up their search after wisdom in the universe outside and concentrated all their energies to search it out in themselves, inside their own bodies, not with the gross material knife of the dissection room, but with the searchlight of their subtle, clear, and unbiased mind. And with what results? The discovery of the highest truths as eternal life, infinite bliss, and all knowledge. Now, all of you young folks, I'll give you something to look forward to. As you get older and stiffer, your feet get further and further away all the time. Hello down there. I don't want to lean over. Anyway, you have that to look forward to. Unless you do a lot of yoga, then you can stay nice and limber. All right. In the body proper, consisting of the head, the trunk, they discovered 6 centers, chakras, the 6 seats of the mind. They're not even going to count the top one. That's outside. You see at the top of the head. The lowest center they call the Muladhara, the basis of all the other centers. Then above it, in respective order, there is the Swadhisthana, the Manipura, the Anahata, the Vishuddha, and the Ajna. They found out that as long as the mind remains confined to the lowermost centers, occupying the pelvic regions and the navel, it undergoes all sorts of miseries which make it very restless. Hell was thus localized in the 2 pelvic centers, the Muladhara and the Swadhisthana, and earth was localized in the Manipura, the 3rd center, situated near the region of the navel. Almost all the men of the world, along with all the lower animals, remain confined in these lower threemost centers. So it is said that eating, sleeping, fear, and sexual enjoyment we have in common along with the lower animals. It is not a fact that most of us lead this sort of animal life. Is it not a fact that most of us lead this sort of animal life? We are apt to call men wise if they have read many books and understood them intellectually, even though they never care to follow the teachings and principles inculcated therein, but direct their energies of their minds to mean and selfish ends like any ordinary mortal, full of animal propensities. Sri Ramakrishna used to compare such people with vultures that soar very high, but always direct their eyes downward in search of rotten carcasses of animals. The truly wise have been thus defined by Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Quote, they should be regarded as wise who can regard a scholarly and humble Brahman, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a Chandala as one and the same, seeing the same self in all. Unquote. Shruti also tells us this self can never be realized, either the man who has the power to discourse upon philosophical subjects perfectly well, or by him who is an exceptional genius to call his own, or by one who has studied many scriptures. He alone is qualified to realize him who exclusively longs for him and nothing else. Before him alone, this self reveals his own true nature. Look at a man who is starving for some days. He longs for nothing but food. When one has that sort of longing for God, he shows himself to him. Such an example is not far to seek. You have all heard the name of our great master, Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna. He hardly knew to read and write, but because the one longing of his life was to realize God, he was blessed with the vision of the Lord, and his soul got illumined with so much wisdom that nowadays he is regarded as a true guide to humanity all over the world. What is there in reading many books and learning everything by rote, like a parrot? Well, of course, the reason to do it is to motivate yourself to have that great longing. Longing isn't something that you can just turn on with a switch. You have to cultivate that longing. And until you've heard about it, you don't even know there's anything to long for. Which, of course, even in the ordinary sense of longing, if you've never experienced ice cream, why would you ever long for it? You don't even have a name to put to it, to long for it. People that live in very simple situations are often extremely happy. They don't know that they're missing the latest TV series or the latest big movie to hit the silver screen or the latest theme park, or if you live in the deep jungle, you don't know that you've missed the ocean. So all of these desires arise in the mind in people that have some contact with them or have been at least told about them. Otherwise, you don't know there's anything to long for. So in order to keep our minds in the right space, and in order to remind ourselves over and over again that there is something that's the most important thing to long for, we need to keep ourselves reading various scriptures. It's a very rare soul indeed, like Latu Maharaj, who was a very simple soul and very uneducated. He was just born with longing. And so rare souls like that need not go through the long process that most of us have to go through. But most of us have to continually, especially I think in the modern day, when all these other desires are always put before us. Advertisers are very good at it. They want you to keep desiring their latest products. And so our poor minds are bombarded with requests to desire things. Don't you really want this? Don't you really want that? Happiness is going to be that new car or whatever it is. Or remodeling your home. How many remodeling home shows are there now? So you have to sort of take the initiative to make sure that you're putting the spiritual desire before you. Otherwise, you just fall into the pit of advertisers. Almost all our modern scholars study many books, more for earning money than for getting true wisdom. Moreover, the books which they read teach them, with pompous parade, agnosticism. So now, of course, he's talking about your normal kind of college education. I certainly know in the public institutions of higher learning in California, they are in large allergic to spiritual subjects. You have to fight to find a spiritual course. I mean, there's some that are more open than others. UCLA is quite allergic to religion. We had to start special programs with special kind of interfaith or connected with something else in order to get any kind of religion taught there at all. What sort of wisdom can we expect out of such studies? Merely cramming the mind with some facts about the phenomenal universe, which looked upon as an objective reality will always remain inexplicable, that can never bring peace and consolation to any soul that wants illumination of true knowledge. Thus, the man of modern education is hopelessly thrown into the quagmire of doubts and dangers from which he can never expect to extricate himself. In his search after truth, he is everywhere checked by the irresistible mandate from the unknown. Thus, quote, "Thus far shalt thou go and no further," unquote. How can his limited ego ever expect to fathom the limitless? Getting blinded by a false pride, the offspring of his ego, he loses all faith in the existence of the Lord of the universe, and thus leads an irresponsible, graceless, and miserable sort of life, which more befits an animal than a rational man. Fully identifying himself with his body, he laughs at the very idea of renouncing the enjoyments of the flesh, and has no mind to go beyond the three lower centers of his body, the genitalia, the rectum, and the navel. My experience is that faith is to be found more in the illiterate people than in the learned scholars nowadays. These three lower centers in the body make us seize with greed all the enjoyments of the flesh. So long as man remains confined in these centers, he becomes very selfish and blinded to the requirements of others. And because selfishness is the common characteristic of the lower animals, such a man does not outgrow his animal nature. It's often said that reaching the heart chakra is really the key. The lower three chakras are below the heart chakra, and then you have, if you include the crown chakra, you've got three chakras above the heart chakra. And what is significant about the heart chakra? Well, that's the center of unconditional love. And so that's why so many of the yogas want you to get there. So for karma yoga, you want to practice unselfishness and unconditional love for other beings. In bhakti yoga, you want to develop a loving relationship with an ishta. And so by opening up this heart center, this allows you to get your consciousness up from the lower three centers into the next center. And once it's in the fourth center, you've got a much better chance of getting into the higher centers. You can't jump over it. You have to go through the fourth chakra. So there has to be some idea of that unconditional love that enters into your life consciousness. And so the more you can be of service to other people and so forth, and to love yourself too. You have to love yourself and to love your chosen ideal with all your heart in order to break into that fourth chakra so that you can then rise above that into these higher realms. It's the gateway. So that helps us to understand some of the teachings of the yoga philosophy. And of course, since we're beings that are still existing in the world, you can't expect to operate in the world from your upper 3 or 4 chakras. You're not going to balance your checkbook or cook a good meal or negotiate sales or something of that nature, dwelling only in your upper 3 chakras. You have to have some groundedness. So the idea is not to abandon the lower 3 chakras. You have to integrate the lower 3 chakras into the upper 4 chakras. You have to be able to operate on all of them, purify all those lower chakras so that they can operate in a pure sense. If they're disconnected from the upper chakras, then they're not going to be operating in a very pure manner. But this is also one of the dangers of doing heavy-duty spiritual practices that you're not ready for, such as extreme levels of pranayama, where it goes on too long or the exercises are inappropriate. And that can awaken some of the energies in the lower 3 chakras and get them up into the upper chakras and mess up your upper chakras. So rather than purifying your lower chakras, what you've done is you've brought the junk from your lower chakras up into your upper chakras, and now you're really a mess. So that's why we have these restrictions on trying to jump ahead and not do the proper spiritual practices. You know, when you read Raja Yoga and you read all through the yamas and niyamas, that's a lot of work. And you think, gosh, if I've already perfected all of this, I'd already be there. Well, there's some truth to that. And so that shows you that the kind of preparation you need. The mantra yoga, which is what most people in our tradition practice to a large extent, where you get a mantra from a guru and you repeat the mantra and you visualize the chosen ideal in your heart and so forth. No, that's what you would call a descending energy yoga, which is trying to bring the purified energy of your upper chakras down through your body and doing it that way rather than trying to forcefully raise things from the lower chakras where you haven't cleaned those up yet. All right, so enough of all of this chakra stuff. Next week we have a visiting lecturer who to me doesn't seem like a visitor because he used to live in the Southern California Center, Swami Atmavidyananda. He had a long, varied history from many centers. He got started in the Chicago Center, then he went to India, and then after he took his final vows, he came to the Southern California Centers, where he spent most of his time at the Trabuco Monastery, and then also helped in the very early days of the San Diego Center. Then he helped establish Ridgely as a center. And then after somewhat of a break, he went to India and helped edit the complete works of Swami Vivekananda for many, many years. And he came back to the United States and he was posted in Houston. And just as he was getting things going in Houston, the Swami at the Gretz Center in France needed to be replaced, and Atmavidyananda was one of the few people that already had some knowledge of French, and so he was posted to the Gretz Center in France. So you can't find too many Swamis that have had such a huge variety of experiences as Atmavidyananda. So be sure to come hear him. He'll be speaking not just on a week from today, but he also has a weekday class. I think, is it Tuesday? Yeah, I think it's on Tuesday that he's doing the weekday class as well. All right, let's close with a chant. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om peace, peace, peace. All right. Good to see you all.